Hello everyone, and thank you Aaron for having me again on your channel. So not long ago I made a video about how I stopped wanting to sound like a native speaker because one, I don't think it's possible in 99.9% of the cases, if not 100. And second, because perfectionism was actually creating more anxiety than anything else and sort of killing the pleasure of me learning a language and progressing in that language. Because every little mistake was just a frustrating experience. I would recommend to watch that video first, as it will give it some context. After this brief introduction, I wanted to talk about speaking with native speakers. Yes, we're talking about native speakers again. It's such an interesting topic because I feel like the native speaker is often seen as the intimidating, superior being, and I like helping people getting over that impression. I think that this impression we have of native speakers is actually one of the reasons why we get so nervous when we speak to native speakers, especially when we are beginners in the language we are using. I mean, I don't know for you, but I feel like whenever I approach a native speaker, I feel like my pronunciation needs to be on point, I need to make sure I conjugate my verbs properly, I need to add the correct endings to the words, etc, etc. Granted, I've been feeling less like this over the years because I've been learning languages for quite a while, so I'm quite used to be in that situation. But it still happens to me, especially recently because I've been going to Japan quite regularly now, so I need to talk to native speakers when I'm there, because English, let alone French, is very minimal, so you just have to use Japanese as much as possible just to make sure you can communicate smoothly. So 3 weeks ago I was in Kobe, Japan, and I had to ask for directions because I was looking for my bus stop. As usual, I felt nervous and stressed and anxious, but I just had to find that bus stop to, just go wherever I needed to go. So I did that. I asked the Japanese woman where my bus stop was, and I was actually quite proud of myself because I managed to understand about 60–70% of what she said, and I just felt proud, even though probably for a very advanced speaker of Japanese or a native speaker, it might sound like it was very basic. And speaking of, please do feel proud of yourself whenever you make any sort of progress, because whatever sort of stage you are at now is always better than what you were before. Here we go, that was a bit of a motivational quote for you. So anyway, after that very brief conversation, I decided that I didn't want to stop there. I thought, what the hell, I made all this effort to approach a native speaker and prepare myself mentally, so I thought I would just carry on and ask a few more questions. And no, I didn't ask her for a phone number. What I did instead was to keep the conversation going by asking additional questions. So for example, I asked her how long it would take me to actually reach the bus stop by foot. I asked her how much was the bus ticket, and other simple questions like that. What I did essentially was to use her as a conversation practice partner. It might seem silly, but it's actually something I do very regularly when I want to practice my languages. So things that I do, or for example, I go to a shop, I pick my products, and with the cashier at the till, I will check the ingredients in a food product that I bought. So for example, I would be like, すみません、このクレープはチョコレートとクレームですか? And then they just answer the question. It's a way for me to practice speaking and also listening. Obviously, you try to make it as natural as possible. You don't come up to people and ask them, oh, can I ask you annoying questions for no reason, just because I want to practice? I don't really think people would enjoy being used like that. So when you do it, just do it very casually. Act like you actually want to have an answer to the question you're asking. And asking questions and kind of making sure you keep the conversation going is a way to see a native speaker as a conversation partner for practice rather than someone that is scary, that will judge you, or that will just make you feel so anxious that you struggle and stutter while you're trying to talk to them. It truly has helped me feel more relaxed when approaching native speakers. And I think the more you have sort of positive interactions with native speakers, so when you don't feel so nervous, the more you will feel relaxed about doing it again and again and again. So your focus shifts from, oh my god, it's a native speaker, to, let's practice a bit what I've learned. I would recommend everyone to do that because it's free practice and you can adapt it to your own level, so you can ask very simple questions or very difficult questions. Obviously, you have to be aware that if you ask difficult questions, questions, you have to make sure you are at least able to understand potentially the information that will be contained in the answer. Otherwise, it can be a bit awkward, and that actually happened to me. On top of that, you will find that people in general, or at least Japanese people, are often very impressed when you are able to string a sentence together, because it shows you make the effort of learning a language. And usually people will have very positive reactions, or at least that was the case in Japan, because they see that you make the effort of trying to speak their language. And it shows that you sort of care about the culture and you really want to try hard to communicate with, them. And what about making mistakes? Well, as a beginner, I know that necessarily I will make mistakes. So what I try to focus on is actually trying to get my message across and making sure I am understood, rather than focusing on the mistakes. If I know I have made a mistake, I try to improve the next time I am in the same situation, or I can look at a dictionary afterwards, or I can ask native speaker friends to help me, find an alternative or a better way to say what I said. In a nutshell, I avoid making it all about getting it perfect, but instead just getting it, which is a good starting point, I think, especially when you're a beginner. Even sometimes native speakers will speak another language that you speak, maybe English, and you can ask them the translation for words. I remember doing that in Japan when one of the staff was, serving drinks, and I asked them in Japanese, because I knew they spoke Japanese, how you would say salt and pepper. So I said something like, sumimasen, Nihongo de salt and pepper wa nan desu ka? It's a way to learn, and usually people have, as I said, a positive reaction. They often will smile at you or think that it's really cool that you're trying to learn a new language. So if I had to sum up this video, it would be that instead of focusing on the native speaker, focus on actually using them as a tool for practicing languages, and see every interaction as a challenge to, push your boundaries, use what you've learned, try to make sense, which is, I think, a challenge in itself, and hopefully that should reduce the anxiety and the stress of speaking to native speakers. And please try not to focus too much on mistakes, because when you have this sort of perfectionist sort of mindset, I think that actually slows down your progress, because you focus so much on getting it perfect, and because you will not be perfect anytime soon, it will reduce your opportunities to actually talk to native speakers, and therefore just slow you down in general. I think you get the idea. If you ditch perfectionism, you will see how much progress you will make, and you will create more opportunities to practice for yourself. So that is it for this video. If you would like to check out more of what I do, go on my channel Kevin Abroad, and I will see you there. Bye!